How's it going, everybody? This is Dave Meltzer. We're going to be here for the next 2 hours talking pro wrestling. We've got Brian Alvarez of Figure 4 Weekly here. We're going to have Rick Bassman of Ultimate Pro Wrestling up in just a couple of minutes. And we also have Don Callis, who's going to be up in about a half an hour. We'll be talking to him. And this is going to be one of those days where we talk mainly about the news. We're going to be concentrating on phone calls. You can call us at 1-877-392-3299. In about a half an hour, we'll start taking, maybe about 40 minutes, we'll start taking phone calls and emails and things like that. Brian, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty good.
Okay, let's go to Rick first, because Rick is up right now. Rick, what's going on?
Hey, Dave, how you doing?
Doing really good. Just got home, so.
All right, good having you out at the show last night.
Oh, yeah, it was a fun show. Good show.
What'd you think? Anything you like?
We talked about last night. Nathan Jones got a ton of potential. We'll talk more about that during the show. He looked really good. The tag team GAY got over his baby faces, which kind of surprised me. But they were very talented and good showmen and people like that. And overall, it was a good show. I liked it. I think that the younger guys are improving a lot as workers, and also they're not taking as many unnecessary risks. I mean, I thought everybody was. I don't think anyone did anything that. Not that nobody missed a spot, but I don't think anyone did anything like above their level.
Yeah, we're real big on in the instruction side about making sure guys aren't taking risks that they just shouldn't be taking.
Yeah,
there's no point. You can put on a good show and entertain everybody without getting too wacky.
Yeah, I was very impressed with that aspect of the show, and just a lot of things, clean finishes. The guys who did, the mic work was real good. I mean, for independent level, one of the problems a lot of independent shows is guys will start doing 15-minute interviews because they think by watching Raw that's what they should do.
Right.
And you guys, nobody was out there too long, and everyone who talked was a good talker.
Yeah, except for me, but we're real hardcore on keeping to the times. We also are pretty stringent about our promo classes, and we teach promos in class. And
how often do you do just the promo class?
Pardon me?
How often do you do just the promo class?
It's a 2-hour class every Saturday.
Okay.
And it's by invite. The guys and the girls, believe it or not, are actually given homework, and a lot of it's written homework. So we know if they're doing it and practicing during the week by what they come back with the following week. So it's a pretty serious study. And the guys and girls you see cutting promos on our show are only the people that go to the classes get those spots on the shows. And that's with the exception, of course, of visiting talent, WWF guys or whatnot.
Now, where did Adam Pearce and Josh Wilcox, and how did that idea come in? Because before, and I'll let everyone know a little bit about it, they did an angle to build up to a match on the next show.
Yeah, it actually worked out pretty well, I thought.
Their mic work was real good, especially Adam Pearce. And I was almost afraid for Josh Wilcox because Adam Pearce's mic work was so good, but Wilcox came back and hung with him.
Yeah, they were both. I don't want to say surprisingly impressive. They were both just impressive. Adam came to us just about 3 months ago from Chicago on the recommendation of Chris Daniels and Kevin Quinn, and he's been a pretty strong addition pretty quickly, teaming with Aaron Aguilera, who signed to WWF. And Aaron is going in for surgery on May the 1st. It's going to put him out for about 3 months. So we're looking for a singles role for Adam in the meantime. And Josh Wilcox from the LA Extreme has been around looking for something to do with us when the season ended. And just they both sort of came up at the same time. So it seemed natural to put them together.
Yeah, that was pretty good. And Edge and Christian and Frankie Kazarian and Nova had a good main event. That was the best match on the show, I thought. I thought that I was very impressed though as far as Nathan Jones and was Johnny Heidenreich.
Big John Heidenreich, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've been with us for just about 6 months now. So for having stepped in a ring just a half year ago, for guys that size, I think they're pretty darned amazing pretty quickly. And I think so much of that's a testament to the training that they're going through with Tom Howard, for instance, who works very, very closely with them. And these guys are just hard workers. They're serious. They're dedicated. I mean, Nathan Jones moved all the way from Australia at his own expense to train with us without any contract. So obviously the guy's serious about it. John Heidenreich did the same thing from New Orleans, and as a matter of fact, actually paid to go to school in the beginning terms. So they're both serious guys. They're good guys. They're working hard, and they hopefully should be a force pretty quickly.
I think Jones is going to make it, and the other thing about and make it big too. And the other thing with Jones that I was impressed with is, and I know he has an acting background, so maybe I should, shouldn't surprise me. But I mean, for a guy, I mean, how many matches has he had? And plus, he went out there, and I mean, he did a quality interview. The interview that you did before his match.
Yep. He's always a theatrical guy, and he studies real hard at that stuff. He's a standout in the promo classes. So he's natural. Facial expressions. Geez, the guy. What I like about Nathan is he's like a scary heel. There's not a lot of guys out there that actually can scare anybody anymore, if you know what I mean. And I think Nathan, by the eyes and the facials, can do that, and convincingly. So I think he'll really get over that way.
And also with the size. The other thing you could do is, I talked to him about this last night, is if you could do because, a few people know it, but he's legitimately one of the strongest men in the world. And if you could do some sort of strongman stunts with him, that you know what I mean, that people could relate to, whether it's ripping a phone book's too old school, but something. You know what I mean? Where
how about the way he killed his opponents? That was pretty strong. But I know what you're saying, though. Sure.
Yeah, I was just So anyway,
to answer your question, though, Nathan and John have had about 10 matches each now.
Wow. Now they've practiced a lot with those two guys that they worked with, though, right?
Yeah. I mean, that match was spotted out, admittedly.
Yeah.
Tom Howard constructed that match and worked with those guys real closely on it. I mean, the funny thing about the guys they worked with, and the reason I was happy to see that and see those guys get over that way, is that you saw them, Dave. They're small guys. Even for small guys, they don't have good bodies.
No.
Neither guy has any look whatsoever. These are two guys you'd look at in a wrestling class and say, well, obviously these guys are hobbyists. They're not going to really do anything. And we get pigeonholed a lot as wanting to favor the big guys, and that's natural in this business. But it was nice for me, and I think for instructors, to see two guys who look very, very average, or even less than average, go out there and actually get over that way. I thought that was great. One of the guys has been training for about 5 months. The dark hair.
Really?
Brand new.
Really?
So it's pretty cool, I think, when you can get new guys out there like that and get it over.
They basically, for the listeners who aren't familiar, they did basically a gay gimmick, G-A-Y, was it Gorgeous and Young or something?
Exactly. Yeah.
Gorgeous and Young. And at the beginning, I was just like, I've seen those things for 30 years, but there was something very entertaining about it. And then at the end, this was really amazing to me, was the fans started chanting G-A-Y, G-A-Y at them as a babyface response, not as a heel response. It wasn't meant as taunting. I mean, it was almost like a standing ovation.
Yeah, it was. It was spontaneous, and it was huge. I mean, it was, as I was talking with Tom Howard about this morning, probably the biggest single response we ever got for somebody in one of our shows, not counting a Triple H. Pretty amazing.
You're an edging Christian or something like that.
They're very entertaining. I don't know what it is. It's just one of those things.
Yeah. So so tell us a little bit about the upcoming plans. What's anything big going on?
Yeah, I mean, there's big things going on and small things going on. But some of the stuff that's definitely happening is we've got a major video deal in place now for a very strong distributor called Mars Entertainment. We're out in Walmart and Best Buy and everywhere else, so people that have heard about us can now check us out on video. Some of the unusual things that we're working on that are very close, and I don't mind saying because the word is out, we're going to be doing our own network reality show this summer with Buta Murray, the people that do the Real World and Road Rules for MTV and Making the Band for ABC. So it's kind of an extension of what you guys saw in the Discovery deal last year. Mm-hmm. So it'll be a half-hour network starting in the end of this summer, which is exciting. And,
start filming in the summer? Or is it like as a pilot, or what's the...
No, it's going to be a half-hour series.
And how's it going to be structured? Is it going to be training school? I think we talked about this a little bit before.
Yeah, it's going to be, it'll be the school. It'll be brand new people coming in and seeing how they develop. It'll be following guys and girls that we already have here that are in various levels as they get ready to do their first shows at the Galaxy. Guys on another level getting ready to do WWF Dark stuff. So it'll actually be following guys and girls on all different levels concurrently. I mean, a lot of the structure still needs to be put in place, but I think the structure will be found as the show progresses. So
as far as time slot and start date, do you have that?
I don't have the exact date, no. But it'll start this summer. And, the thing that's cool about it is we're never in a million years going to try to, quote unquote, compete with WWF. It's just not possible in this environment. At least I don't think it is. They're doing wrestling television and touring behind it, obviously, and doing their pay-per-views. We don't have plans to try to do any of those things. Our goals are to continue to create great content and to find different ways to roll it out, i.e. the reality series, a virtual reality wrestling program we're working on, which looks very, very cool so far. It's just different stuff. So we hope to be able to bring a new type of product to the wrestling fans and to do it with the support of the WWF, which looks very, very likely. So those are some of the goals.
So now, are you looking? You mentioned is this going to be like a prime time thing or a weekend show, or do you even know?
I'm told it's going to be network prime time.
Really?
Yeah.
Like a summer replacement type of a thing?
If it's summer, I guess you'd have to call it replacement. Although if the writers strike does happen, there'll be a lot of new shows debuting also, and obviously a lot of that stuff's going to be reality programmed. It would have to be, since the writers will not be writing.
Yeah.
So a lot of that's up in the air. I think and I hate to say this, but I think we're one of the few people out there actually, in a strange way, kind of rooting for the writers' strike, because it increases our chances of getting on a lot faster and going a lot further with the concept. So we'll see how it goes. But I think it's going to be unique. It's going to allow wrestling fans and non-wrestling fans to really get to know our characters in a much different way than they've gotten to know wrestling characters in the past. And Dave, you've been to a couple other shows now, so I think we got some pretty interesting guys and girls.
Oh yeah.
With the prototypes and the sadists and the Rio Storms and the Ballards and so on and so forth. It should be pretty compelling programming.
Yeah, a lot of interesting people, a lot of photogenic people, people who are improving as workers every time I see them.
Yeah. The group's working hard. Our trainers, Tom Howard and Chris Daniels and Kevin Quinn and the guys that come in and help out. Our trainers are phenomenal. They're dedicated. We're running school 6 days a week now. The classes are better attended all the time. People are getting more serious. So I think a byproduct is obviously the work rate's going up, thankfully.
Yeah. Everyone pretty much belongs. I really, you did the three-way with the Cubanitos and who were the other guys? Andy Van Dam and Prodigy.
Yeah, and then the Manila Thrillers.
The Manila Thrillers, right. And those guys, I think that those same guys do a match in December. And they were flying around and everything, but this time I just thought that there was a noticeable improvement in what they did in their poise, and also they weren't hurting each other, which the first time I saw them, I don't think they were necessarily hurting each other, they were probably hurting themselves by trying to, just do so many dives in the match and get all of these things in.
Yeah, I think a turning point was we did a show in San Diego where the Cubanitos, who were pretty good for their age, actually worked with two DJs. It was a gimmick show. And the DJs, not only had they never been in a ring before, they were both horribly out of shape. And it actually turned out probably being the best match the Cubanitos ever had. Just because it worked. The audience got into it. The psychology was structured properly. We put the match together. And then they finally realized through that, we've been trying to point out for ages, which was you don't have to go out there and kill yourself with spots to get over in a match. And that was a turning point for our smaller guys, I think, psychologically speaking. And it's something we've been trying to drive home to everybody for the past half year, is the psychology of putting a match together and telling a story without just doing ridiculous spot fests. And everyone's starting to get it.
There's another thing on the show that I thought was real interesting, and that it impressed me as far as knowledge of the audience, because there was a spot, it was Samoa Joe was wrestling Tommy Dreamer.
Mm-hmm.
And Samoa Joe, for those of you who don't know of him, is, total heel character right now. In fact, just turned about, 2 months ago?
Yeah, about 2-3 months ago, yeah.
Right, so he did the turn. Dreamer, of course, came in as, big-time babyface, and everyone knew who he was and all that, obviously. And during the match, at one point, Samoa Joe, it's a really weird spot, Brian, with it. Samoa Joe picks up a chair, and he's about to hit Dreamer. Dreamer's covering up, and he puts the chair down and doesn't hit him. And by not hitting him, the whole place turned, it made him, it was like...
They got more angry.
They got really angry that he didn't hit him with the chair than if he had actually hit him with the chair.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very interesting psychological thing. And obviously he did the right thing, because it actually probably got the biggest, heel pop of that entire match.
Yeah, that was a trippy spot. You know, I was wondering where he was going with it, and I think you're right. It became apparent. It raised the heat level. Match was rough. Definitely a rough match.
Yeah, and the other thing with it, when he put the chair down, he gave that smirk to the crowd. It wasn't just, you know what I mean. He projected to the crowd what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
So, Rick, anything else? Because we're going to go run down the news, which we haven't talked about on the show yet.
Yeah, I'll let you go. I appreciate your support, Dave. Look for us to expand our school presence into several major markets this year. Should be something new for the business and pretty dynamic. Again, hoping to do that with WWF support. If you guys want to check out what the school's about, you go to our website, upw.com. We have out right now what I'm sure is the best training series ever put out in pro wrestling. You may want to check that out. It's also in Tower Records and pretty much everywhere they sell video. That's it. I'm done pitching you for the day. Dave, thanks very much. I appreciate it. And I hope to see you at our next show, man.
Okay, great.
Take care, guys.
Okay.
Bye.
All right, Brian, what's going on with the news?
Actually, it was a pretty slow news day. Actually, I think the biggest news was the Big Show conference call. I'll get to that in a second. Only other real news today, Court TV was scheduled to air the Lionel Tate murder trial today, but it got postponed till Monday. So if anybody Monday sees a show, because I don't have Court TV, I think Dave does, so I guess you could watch it, Dave. But if anyone wants to send me a report, I'd appreciate it. But that is this Monday, Court TV, the Lionel Tate murder trial. Big Show today was just basically the WWF TNN conference call. He talked about the word goofs, which he says the honest-to-God truth is that he said the word goofs, and that the problem was that he always talks like he's got a mouthful of spit, and he also blamed that on the acromegaly, but he said that the people that were doing the pre-tape knew that he said goofs, but apparently the people in the truck did not, and they freaked out, so that's why it aired, and he said he really wished they had not bleeped it out because it just made it sound worse than it actually was. And, he went on and on about how it's, he would never say something like that on TV, and it's not cool and that sort of thing. So, probably did say goofs, and, if it was a pre-tape, then, if he said goofs, I'm sure if he hadn't said that, they would have, just had him tape it over again. So, I'm pretty sure that's what he said, but that was like there was really nothing groundbreaking in the whole thing. Talked about Ohio Valley, said that it was the greatest thing that had ever happened to him in his wrestling career, and he told a story that I don't find hard to believe, but I'd never heard it before, and he was talking about how old school Jim Cornette was, and he said in Ohio Valley, if the babyface and heels were found eating dinner together in a public place, Jim Cornette would actually fine them, and I had never heard that story before. And he also talked about how when he first started in World Championship Wrestling, one of the biggest problems was he immediately started working on top as, his first match was with Hulk Hogan for the world title. And he said the interesting thing was that when he was the world champion in WCW, Mark Mero, of all people, who was working as Johnny B. Bad, was making, he claimed, 5 times what he was making. So, I thought that was pretty interesting.
I don't think that one's true.
I don't think it's true as far as like the 5 times, but I think he was probably making a little bit more.
He might have been making more, but
yeah.
If Mark Mero was making 300 in WCW, I just don't see that he was making 60 as world champion.
Yeah.
And that one kind of difficult to believe.
Yeah, but, he said WWF was very smart, sent him to Ohio Valley, and that was pretty much it. Only other major thing from the conference call, David Schwartz came on before the thing and said that no news from TNN's side regarding WCW or the future of the XFL. He said that Mick Foley's book would be coming out Tuesday, May 8th, and that the first signing would be at WWF New York on May 10th at 5 o'clock p.m. And for those of you with the KU band, Insurrection will be airing at WWF New York, so apparently you should be able to get that. I don't know exactly how that works, but... And then Howard Stern tomorrow will be at WWF New York doing a show live with Hunter and Steve Austin. As far as Tough Enough, it'll be wrapped up in about 3 weeks, and will begin airing sometime in June. And no further news as far as what's going on with WCW. So that was pretty much it for the conference call, and that was basically all the news for the day.
Okay. I actually have some news about the WCW thing. Jim Ross was in Los Angeles yesterday. He was at the UPW show last night, and he was having meetings with a lot of the Southern California-based WCW wrestlers, or former WCW wrestlers. I don't know if he met with Bill Goldberg, but I do know that Bill Goldberg is now considered, I would say, 95% a dead issue. It's just one of those things where it's not going to happen. So I think the decision's been made. As far as, not starting at WCW, I mean, certainly that's not the plan is. I mean, the plan is 100% in the direction of starting it up as a singular as an organization, as opposed to just doing, bringing 10 guys in or something to do a feud right away. And the plan's 100% in that direction right now. Of course, things can change. It hasn't started. There is no start date. But there's really nothing else new about it. And I think that they are looking at probably debuting a lot of the Ohio Valley and Memphis guys as part of that company, just because there's more open spots and things like that. But the main thing was I'm presuming that he's spoken with Bill Goldberg in if it wasn't yesterday, in the last couple of days, and that it was just like, God, he's just got so much money that he's owed, that he's due. It might be like $6 or $7 million, and in total over the length of the contract. And it was just it was too basically it was at his age. At his age, it's just too much money to walk away from. Yeah. So that's basically the situation.
Any news on the other big names like Flair or Page?
No. Hopefully, I'll have more. By certainly by Monday's show. Flair's the same situation. Flair hasn't even heard from Time Warner yet as far as any conditions of a buyout. But I'd say with Flair, it's very, very doubtful. He was on the show. He would like to work with The Rock. Don't get your hopes up of things like that happening. It's like he would love to do it. Yeah, well, anyway, he'd love to do this on Monday night just to do it. But he'd love to do it. But he can't. At his age, he's a lot older than Bill Goldberg. He can't walk away from that kind of money either, unless Time Warner's going to offer him like 80 cents on the dollar buyout or something like that, and then they don't go to the WWF. But and it wouldn't be in their worst interest to do it. It's not like they're running shows or anything. But there's been no movement in that direction whatsoever.
It's almost a game either way, because Time Warner, if there's absolutely no interest in Goldberg and like a year goes by and it's clear that WWF is not going to take him, they may offer him 80 cents or 90 cents just to save that 10 cents.
Yeah, if they do, then he can go to WWF. And maybe it's a whole game that they're playing because they feel that they're holding the contracts to all the valuable guys, and they want WWF to buy some of those contracts, which WWF isn't willing to do. And that's really the game that's going on. Everyone's going like, not understanding it. That's the game. It does make sense, and they're both maneuvering. The Time Warner side feels that if they start this company up on television without any big stars, it's going to flop. So therefore, they're going to have to pick up more of the contracts. And their feeling is we don't got to pick up more of the contracts. We can just start it. We'll call it WCW. We don't need any of the top guys and any of the big contracts. So, one of them will be proven right at some point in time. We got Don Callis on the line. Don, how are you doing today?
Very good, Dave. How are you?
Doing really, really good. You're another one who's, we talked about this a couple days ago. Your life situation totally changed. Some people are aware of it. I think it's kind of out now that, you pretty much were going to be in, as an announcer or manager, do you even know, if Eric Bischoff had gotten the company?
I certainly think that initially it was, as a color commentator, I suspect Joey Styles and myself, although I don't know that because I haven't talked to Joey about it. But when the Lawler thing broke, I kind of thought, well, maybe I'll end up going there as a manager. Not that I felt that I couldn't compete with Jerry Lawler. It's just from a name value standpoint. I would have put Lawler ahead of me, whether he's better or not, based on the fact that it would have looked somewhat like a steal. So whether I would have ended up as a manager or doing some writing or what, I have no idea. But my indication was that I had a deal to go there.
So now that that's fallen through, I know you're helping as Tony Condello do some independent stuff in Winnipeg. What else is as far as your career is going? What are you doing and what are your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting because of course it's an odd business when you kind of go from feast to famine, and literally, I had a call. I guess about 36 hours before it came out that the deal was dead, I had a call telling me the deal was done and that it was okay. And so I was kind of in the mood to celebrate. And as I say, 36 hours later, it kind of crashed down. And, you really go. And the other thing was that, you kind of went from December, January, where I still believed and hoped that ECW would survive. Because I was exceedingly happy there. You kind of go from having three options to one option almost overnight, in a sense. So yeah, it's been difficult, but and if I stop and actually think about, well, how much money am I out, or how much would I have made? I mean, you drive yourself crazy. So you just have to go on, and I mean, something may break for me in wrestling. And one thing I did learn was that I don't ever want to be in the situation where I'm kind of in this situation again. So what I've done is tried to focus on things outside of wrestling, because one thing that happened to me the last 3 years, because I had a good life with both the WWF and ECW, but I became lazy. Not lazy about wrestling related stuff, but lazy about doing other things. I was home 5-6 days a week. I could have been doing all sorts of things, and I just didn't do it because I didn't have to. So right now I'm studying. I'm hoping to do my MBA next year, so that if I do get back into wrestling in some form or fashion, that it won't be all eggs in one basket, and then you can't be hurt by shifts in the industry or what have you. I'm still involved in wrestling. I still write my newspaper columns, and I help actually a couple of different promoters up here with booking and things like that. So I'm still involved, and I still talk to a lot of my friends who are still involved. So it's something I certainly would like to get back into at some point, but I don't want to be in a situation where it's the be-all and end-all for me.
What would you consider your status with the WWF? Because a lot of people put it different ways, everything from, like, having heat with The Office to just, leaving on bad terms, or, what would you consider it?
You hear all sorts of things, and I've read some things online and whatnot that are so totally false, like how I used to, berate Kurgan in front of the boys and, treat them, and Giant Silva too. Kurgan was at the time probably my best friend in the company. We traveled together, and we still talk all the time, call each other on holidays. So the thought that I would do that to him is ridiculous, and I never even did that to him in private. We used to joke around all the time, but then everybody does that. And the thought that someone's giving me credit for being a little braver than I am to say that I would berate Giant Silva about anything, I was scared to death of that guy. So, what it was is I have no idea. That was one of the reasons I was given for my release, and I think at the end of the day, I was never told with who or anything like that, and how much heat. I think at the end of the day, they were paying me a salary, and they didn't have a spot for me at the time. So it becomes a business decision, I think, when you look at it and say, well, we're paying this guy, we don't know what to do with him. It's a business decision. They release you, and I was told when I was released the door was open to come back. Which was really nice, but in my mind I thought I need to get out there and do something, so I called Lance Storm, who talked to Paul Heyman for me, and got me into ECW. And in one sense, I don't see the release from the WWF as this big disaster that happened to me. At the time, I certainly did, because my goal in life was always to get to the World Wrestling Federation with my dream. So when it happened, I was very upset, but it really worked out well that they did release me, because it forced me to go out and find something else, and the opportunity that I got in ECW, to be in the mix on top and to show what I could do. I might not have got that opportunity had I just stayed under contract with WWF, just because of the sheer number of guys and the fact that they weren't sure what to do with me. So although I would have gladly stayed there and done nothing at the time because I just wanted to be in the company, going to ECW turned out to be a good thing because they needed some talent, and Paul allowed me to go out and get over and do whatever I did. And I never would have had that opportunity had they not released me. So it worked out well in that sense.
Okay, I want to hit a couple of emails. We're going to head to a break, and we're going to start taking phone calls after the break, so you can call in at 1-877-392-3299. We can talk to Don Callis pretty much about anything going on in the world of wrestling and us as well. We're going to concentrate a lot on the news today since we haven't been doing that with the guests and everything the last couple of days. This is first from Mike, who is asking about the No Holds Barred book by Clyde Gentry, if there's any plans to review it in the Observer. And I didn't know that book, is that and Al's not here, I didn't know that book was out, although I have talked to Clyde Gentry in the past, and I saw him at the last UFC, and I knew it was coming out. So if that book is out, let me know, and I will try to get it and look through it and write a little bit about it, as a matter of fact. Let's see what we have here. This is someone from the UK who mentions, in the United Kingdom, W pay-per-views air live in the United Kingdom starting at 1 a.m. He goes, the main event has to be really good to make me stay up or go to bed, and then wake up to watch the main event. The last several main events have been really good, but this one at Backlash is terrible. It's the worst one since King of the Ring of 2000. Second, on the website, I saw a petition to get Legion of Doom back in WWF. I hope this is a joke. There's petitions for everything. What can I say? Let's see. With a lack of competition for WWF, I have a bad feeling this rushed booking is going to catch up with them. That's one thing that is clear, is you can tell from watching WWF, and certainly, and I heard SmackDown, by the way, was better than Raw, so we'll see that later tonight. But one of the things when you watch WWF each day, you can see that, that they're booking day to day. I mean, it's not like these are long, like when they're out of the last pay-per-view, it's not like they're keeping these matches on the next pay-per-view a secret until the last week. I mean, they're literally
they just don't know what they are.
Yeah, they don't know what they are. And the perfect example was Tuesday morning. We were talking about Raven and Eddie Guerrero and how that finish made no sense. And funny thing is that they felt the same thing. I don't know why they booked the finish, but they actually then rechanged the card, put Matt Hardy over for the European title. And, now they've got Matt Hardy, Christian, and Eddie Guerrero in a three-way for the European title. And they've moved Raven in with Rhino. So they've changed the thing. Anyway, he actually writes about this. It just goes, having Matt Hardy win the European title with no build-up, and after they've already been building up the Raven Eddie Guerrero match and changing it a few days before the pay-per-view makes little or no sense. Eddie will probably win the belt back anyway, so what purpose does it have for Matt to win the title and then lose it? Well, I don't know. I don't even know what's going to...
What's Matt?
I don't think it mattered. I mean, it's just the European title. I think that they were just looking for a good match with three good people. I think a three-way, unfortunately, gets three guys on the show, and they want to get... You know what I mean? I think it's almost like that. Well, let's see. We've got all these talented guys.
The indie
really
booking.
don't have a... What?
The indie booking. Oh, we got an extra guy here. Let's just make it a three-way.
Yeah, we have all these talented guys, and we want to get them all on the show, and, this is a good... Hey, look at it on paper. Matt Hardy, Eddie Guerrero, and Christian. This looks like a good match, and probably will be really good. He goes, I feel bad for the Hardys because they have the talent and ability to go far, but their mic skills are not great. Still, they get a good pop at the arena and have a future. Hey, what are they, 23 and 27? Is that their ages? 26, something like that? I mean, I know Jeff's 23. What?
I think Matt's around my age, so 25, 26.
Yeah. So, yeah, they have a future. Don't worry about it. Let's see. Just because they're not 6'8" and 300 doesn't mean there's not a spot for them above the mid-card level. I can understand why Triple H would manipulate the situation of one company being on top to his advantage in order to keep his top spot. It's not just him. That is part of the game that's going to be in wrestling. Everyone, I don't want to say everyone in that position is going to do it, but the majority are going to, anyone. Don, you could relate to this too. If you have power, certainly, even if it's subconscious, and you're just booking, you're always going to come up with better ideas for yourself, and, ideas, if you're going to come up with ideas for yourself that put yourself in with the top guys. It's pretty much, if you've got an active performer, and not that he's a booker, because he's not, but he does have, Vince's ear. If you're an active performer and you have a hand in the booking, unless you really have no ego and you're like a guy who's on the, the end of your career and know you're at the end of your career and you're just kind of like working the undercard just to keep in shape, it's almost always going to happen. I mean, we see, a million examples of it in the history of wrestling.
Well, I think also, as a performer, you know your own character and the things that you can do better than even the booker or the boss does. And you should. And as a result, you're always going to come up with better material for yourself. When that starts to, it starts to become a conflict in some senses, but in some senses it's also unavoidable. If you offer up an idea which you're encouraged to do, the chances are it's going to be something that you think you can do, which is going to benefit you.
And I also want to real quick go through this poll question. We don't have a new one up just because I literally walked in the door just minutes before the show started. But for Raw, and we will have one on SmackDown for tomorrow, but what did you think of Raw? 5% excellent, 20% good, 48% average, 18% bad, 9% awful. So it was pretty much a consensus that it was an average show, which kind of agree. Don, one thing I was going to ask you about as it relates to the current situation in wrestling and everything. Long term, short term, what are your thoughts as far as the WCW aspect within WWF and going? And I'm thinking more of a fan standpoint. What do you think the fans are going to need from that show for that show to be successful, especially in light of the fact that its time slot, looks to be Saturday 11 to 1, which is a different slot, and also that, the Bill Goldbergs and the Ric Flairs at this point don't look likely to be on the show.
Well, I think it's been stated many times that what they obviously need is for some top WWF talent, like a Triple H, an Undertaker, or a Rock, or someone of that ilk, to make the crossover to establish it. They're especially going to need that if you don't have guys like Bill Goldberg, guys who are, and Ric Flair, who are very much associated with that WCW product. They're going to need that first and foremost. I think that they need to do something with Scott Steiner. I think I've been a big proponent of them using him in that spot. I mean, the pop that he got when I think it was Vince mentioned his name on television is indicative of the type of performer that he can be. And I think that at the end of the day, the best characters in wrestling always are the ones that are believable. And I think Scott Steiner is a guy who's very believable. So I think they need to get him into the game somehow, maybe using him to cross over in between the two. You've got to give the impression, I think, on the WCW show that, you're going to have to tune in at that late night hour because you're going to see something you're not going to see in WWF, and you're going to see something. I mean, it's almost like the old DX thing where they show up at the WCW arena and whatnot. You're going to have things like that in order to draw people to go into that time slot and watch that show.
I think I agree that they're going to have to do certain practical jokes, and also, at least at the beginning, you can balance out later. At the beginning, I think that they have to make WCW outsmart WWF a few times so people take it, but not in a heelish way.
Yeah, I think
so people, because right now the perception of WCW in everyone's mind is, pretty negative.
I think you've got to establish them as the kind of cool maverick promotion, almost the old ECW gimmick. And, I think that can be done, obviously, with Shane. Shane kind of fits into that role. He's rebelling against the father and for the purposes of the storyline. I think you need to make WCW cool and the maverick thing. And to do that, you need to also portray WWF as kind of the big, corporate entity. And of course, I mean, WWF figuratively is going to have to sell for WCW in order to get WCW over.
Okay,
I just hope they do that because I just look at it as like everybody now knows that WCW is a separate organization or it's supposedly supposed to be a separate organization, but in reality, Vince owns both companies. And I just see like perhaps an ego with Vince where he still looks at WCW as like this lesser organization and doesn't want to let it get over, when in reality there's no reason to not let WCW, get some wins over the WWF. I mean, they own both companies.
Well, and I think both sides can kind of be taken care of if you let them get the wins. And then at the end of the day, whenever the end of the day is with this thing, it could be a year from now and it could be 20 years from now, the WWF ends up coming out on top. Art imitates real life, so to speak. And I think Vince is smart enough, obviously, to know that, I mean, there's no egos involved here anymore. I mean, it's the business is his, and I mean, this is his future in terms of pay-per-view and whatnot, and he'll be smart about it.
Well, the one thing is that the business of wrestling in North America, largely, I'm not saying it largely depends on the success of the World Wrestling Federation at this point because it's the only major player, at least until somebody else gets that level. And the success, not that the World Wrestling Federation will fail, but a huge upswing is only going to come if this feud is done right. Because if this feud is done wrong, it's going to lead to, if the feud doesn't work in some form or fashion, I think that it will lead to a decline in popularity. If the feud works really well, it's going to lead to a big upswing in popularity of the entire business in North America.
I mean, I think that's right.
Yeah. Let's go to Randy in Indiana. Randy, you're first up.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good.
It's so awesome to hear Don Callis with the volume turned down. That's so awesome. Guys, real quick, I just wanted to say Backlash on Sunday, two matches. The first one, Vince and Shane, and I'll try to be brief as possible. It was mentioned on the Wrestling Observer.
It's Shane and Show.
Oh, I'm sorry, Shane and Show. My fault.
Yeah.
Shane and Show. It was mentioned on the Observer website a few days ago that Shane getting chokeslammed and destroyed on SmackDown last Thursday was really bad, and it really makes him look like a weak character. I totally agree. I totally disagree because the way the storyline's been going, right now Shane's character has been getting the last laugh in a lot of these things. Shane's character got the last laugh over Vince's in getting WCW. Shane's character got the victory at WrestleMania. I think it's just natural. A typical storyline shows that the other character gets the last laugh every once in a while, if you guys understand what I'm saying. And so I just think that's a natural storyline. And as far as the main event, some guy in your email had said it's going to be the worst main event in quite a while. Maybe, but you've got 4 guys there in the main event that when pay-per-views come around, these guys give it their all, especially Triple H, who has not had a bad pay-per-view out of the 3 pay-per-views he's wrestled. So I'm going to tell you, 4 guys that really turn it up a notch when it comes to
But everyone in the company does, though. I mean, they don't have lazy main eventers.
I mean, I don't think it's going to be like a bad main event. I just think when you look back at the string of great main events that they've had, this one won't be able to touch it.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be horrible.
No. I think it's going to be interesting.
Oh, it'll be well above average. I would seriously. I mean, you got Austin and Triple H, them just by themselves with their work rate, and I mean the other guys are going to work as hard as they can too. I would think that you're pretty much going to have a good match unless both Austin and Triple H get a really bad injury in the first 2 minutes of the match.
Yeah. Like I said, and all 4 guys can tell an incredible story in the ring, so that's really important. Hey, thanks, guys.
Okay, you're very welcome. Let's go to Alex in Puerto Rico. Alex, what's up?
Yes, can I talk to Don Callis real quick?
You certainly can.
I read in a local newspaper here in Puerto Rico a couple months ago, ECW was on a local channel, but when I turned it on, for the time that ECW will come on, it didn't come on.
Yeah. I don't know if Don's going to know about that.
How long ago was this that you read this?
October of last year.
Oh, okay. I thought this was like recently because the company no longer exists.
I mean like last year, because a lot of fans started calling a local channel here in Puerto Rico to start carrying ECW. They actually had it listed on the programming schedule and the newspapers, and when it came on time to watch ECW, it didn't come on.
Oh my
God. You ever hear anything about a Puerto Rico TV deal?
I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah, I never had heard anything about it either.
Maybe it was a typo.
WCW and they printed an E or something? No.
Yeah.
Who knows?
But like I was saying, how is WCW going to have book tickets for the new Nitro?
What do you mean?
Like Nitro's coming on what, June 16th? Right?
Nobody knows. Nobody knows.
How are they going to get people to come to see Nitro in the arena if there's no tickets for sale and no venue?
There'll be tickets for sale. There will be tickets for sale long before the first show. I promise that.
Well, they don't have to put tickets on sale because they don't have any shows yet, so they don't have to worry about getting people to the arenas that are not booked.
And it's a rock.
The day they officially announce the arenas, I have a feeling the tickets will go on sale very shortly after that.
Like I was saying, you think that first show WCW will have will be in Madison Square Garden?
Absolutely
no
not.
Way.
Absolutely not. They're gonna be smart and they're gonna go to a place that probably holds 5,000 to 7,000 people. They go into some place that holds 20,000 people and they will not. No, absolutely not.
Okay, I saw IWA this Sunday. The big guy that came in,
Russ McCullough.
Russ McCullough?
He looked like Kevin Nash and the Big Show put together into one.
I think we always used to say that. He's got to find his own identity, badly, because he can't come in looking like either of those guys or everyone's going to go, oh, he looks too much like those two
When
guys.
Jim Ross makes fun of you saying you need to find your own identity, that should send you a message right there.
Yeah, like on Thunder and Lightning in the WWC, they look like rip-offs of Kane.
Of who? Of Kane?
Thunder and Lightning in the WWC, they look like they borrowed their outfits from Kane.
Oh, and then wasn't there like legal action about that at one point, like early on when Thunder and Lightning first came out, that they looked so much like Kane that McDivitt sent them a nasty letter? I think that happened. It seems
they had the masks and everything.
Yeah, they look like the same outfit as Kane, but in a different color, blue.
Yeah. At the beginning, I think at the beginning it was like almost, it was too close.
Okay, like I was saying, how many cable companies are signing on to get TNN?
Almost all of them in this country. They're in 81 million homes now.
How about in Puerto Rico?
I have no idea about Puerto Rico. I don't know.
And also one thing, is WCW going to start having like after Nitro more their syndicated show again?
No, that's not in the cards right now. It's just one TV, which would be a Nitro taping, or another name. for 2 hours that they would be doing. And if it's popular, they may start syndication at some point down the road. But right now, that's not the plan.
So, Don, can I talk to Don Callis?
Go ahead.
Yes, you can.
Excuse me, Cyrus, or you want to call yourself Don?
Whatever.
Why did you sign on with TNN? You should have signed on with Fox or ABC. Would have kept half the money.
Yeah, that's
He's got you
exactly
there.
I was enjoying ECW, even bought a pay-per-view from you people. And yet you let TNN take your money to buy the WWF, the rights to air Raw.
It wasn't exactly like that, but maybe it looks that way from the outside.
Because they stole ECW's money, thus ECW went out of business.
Those bastards.
I also want to make mention, we got a lot of emails when I got home about Tommy Dreamer, and we're really going to try to get him on again. Everybody really liked him yesterday. We got a really good response. So, told some funny stories about Green Day. I never heard that story before. Don, did you ever hear that story?
About what?
When Tommy Dreamer met Green Day before they were famous?
No.
Oh, I guess they were insulting some girl that he was with, and he didn't know who they were.
He was
and they didn't know
trying
who
to
he
get
was.
with. They had a hotel.
He was,
She was like the front desk lady. He was trying to hook up with her. And Green Day insulted the lady, and so they almost got in a fight.
Called her a lot of nasty words, and he felt compelled to defend her, and anyway, that was the story.
Well, Tommy's a good guy.
Yeah.
And a nice guy.
Yeah, he is. He's really good. This is from Jason, who goes, can you ask Don what the deal is with his website? I haven't been able to access it for a while.
I think we've been a victim of the kind of crashing internet economy, and the server or whatever that we were on had some financial difficulties, so we're currently making a switch. In fact, I may switch over with the law. I'm just kind of, been revamping and rethinking it. Obviously, things have changed business-wise for me, so we've just been kind of taking the time to look at a different way to approach the website, but we'll probably end up on the law.
Okay, we're going to go to Rick in Maryland. Rick, what's going on?
Dave.
Hey.
How you doing?
Rick.
Yeah, that's me. I was calling to talk about Kai and Tai. I just think the way the WWF treats them is absolutely appalling. These guys are top workers from Japan, and they're put over as comedic heels, and I just don't get it.
That's always how guys that size are probably going to be treated there.
They're treated like they're 50s Japanese workers, though. I mean, the mannerisms, the bowing when they come out, it's almost like Mr. Saito or something like that from
well,
the
you have to look at it
AWA.
as like that's what Vince watched. Vince doesn't get like Michinoku Pro tapes or watch New Japan or
but
watch the
when
Gala
came out,
Vision.
they were bargaining for him. They were NWGP and I said that wrong. I'm sorry. And WCW. They were all in a bargaining war over Taka Michinoku, and now they got him and they treat him like absolute dirt. I mean, they're pushing.
Well, you know, good for about 2 weeks.
What's
yeah,
that?
You got it. Remember, we talk about this on the show all the time. When you're around people, your perspective of them is so different than when you watch them on television. On television, size matters a little bit, but when you're around someone live, I mean, Don, you can, perfect example. When you're around really big guys, I mean, just last night I was with Nathan Jones. Okay. They impress you so much because they're just so big, especially if they're big and agile.
Yep.
But sometimes to a TV person, you're watching on TV and you just see talent. But something just, again, and plus the natural inclination that big guys will draw more money, which all things being equal, they will. But of course, all things aren't equal. And then you're a guy who's, Vince McMahon size. And then you see guys the size of Taka and Funaki. And, your natural inclination is that, I can beat them up, so how seriously can we make them? It's just one of those things that I don't think it's ever going to go away when you've got a real big, strong, when you're not necessarily, just a big promoter and little guys, and also he always, his father always promoted big guys. And it's just that mentality of the McMahon wrestling has always been, good-sized guys, and we always talk about the deception and everything. I mean, one of Don's friends last night, one thing people don't realize is Edge and Christian. They're really, they're not like monster guys. They're not like 6'6" or nothing, but they're a lot bigger guys than you. They're bigger than you think. Take my word for it.
I just feel that they're promoting Japanese workers and WWF the same way they promoted them in the 50s. If they did that with African American or any other race, I think that people would be appalled. But because they're used in a comedic sense, it's funny. If the Big Show did call them what they say, that's because the WWF treats them like that.
Don, let Don say something real quick.
I was just going to say, I think to flip what the caller's saying another way, his initial comment, I would say that in some ways having them do that is showing them a different side of the business that they're never going to learn working in Japan or Mexico. They're getting some acting ability. I mean, when I had Ultimo Dragon up here in '96, he showed exactly what kind of a professional he was. He immediately adapted to the American style up here, hamming it up to the crowd, facials, things like that. These guys are getting some acting kind of lessons, if you want to call it that, and they're getting to show a whole different side. Everyone knows they can work. But, I mean, in WWF, you need to have some charisma in order to get over and in order to get put on that television, and they're getting an opportunity to show that.
Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt that stereotyping in wrestling exists and to a big-time degree. And, but again, I don't know how, unless you take the smaller guys and you keep them apart from the bigger guys and you have them do their own division, and, then the size isn't as much of an issue. It's real hard to book those guys, and they really are small against the rest of those guys who really are big without some sort of comedy involved. Not that I agree with necessarily all the comedy, but, when you have them in there with, any of those, even, Goodfather and Bull Buchanan, those are two other guys. Those are huge men.
Humongous.
You don't even realize how big, I grew up with Goodfather, and even though we weren't friends or anything, but we were trained at the same gym, and you don't even think of him as a monster. When he was in the gym, that man was a monster. He's a 6'6", 300-pound guy.
The whole thing, it just makes me so mad when I see guys that don't really have the ability getting the big push just because they're big. When the fans at home, they really have no idea, because I always looked at like Mike Sanders, and when Mike Sanders debuted, he debuted with the Thrillers, and he looked like a small guy, because these Thrillers were just these absolutely enormous people. And then they put him in matches with like Chavo, and you realize what a big guy Mike Sanders really was.
Well,
and like
also,
the whole
Chavo's also not that big. That's another thing.
Yeah, it's all illusion, and if you just book it correctly, it doesn't matter how big a person is. And to give a person a push just because they're big when you see them in the airport or in the locker room, it's just, I don't get it.
Well, look, Brian, I debuted in WWF with the three of the biggest guys in that company at the time: Kurgan, Luke Poirier, and Bull Buchanan. And my friends who saw me on TV said, "My God, you look like a little midget." I'm 6'2", but I look like a midget, and it was, I think it was almost that perception of Vince seeing that on television, saying, "Well, maybe we should think about making this guy a manager." I was probably in the lower echelon size-wise in that company, but I wasn't as small as I looked either. It's just these guys are massive. It's unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
ECW just seems to promote, or same with WCW, promote these Japanese workers a lot better than I think WWF does. They had no problems with Tajiri. They had no problems with Jado and Gato.
ECW definitely did better, but Paul has, I don't know how to explain it. Paul has a lot of confidence in his ability and adaptability to get different type of people over, whereas I think that with Vince McMahon, when it comes to certain guys, they may have the mentality, more of an old school mentality of that, because this and this and this exists, we can't get him over. If it was believe me, WCW could not have gotten Masato Tanaka over, and Yoshihiro Tajiri would have been just like every excellent Mexican wrestler that they had, that they did nothing with, like Silver King and all of them.
Yeah.
As great a worker as he is, because they would not have just gotten him over.
And another thing is, like, Eric and Paul both, they're willing to try new things, and Eric was willing to bring these guys in and let them do what they wanted to do. But then when it became time to, maybe elevate him or whatever, he had the old school guys like Hogan in his ear telling him, you can't bring these guys up. They won't draw, whatever. Same thing that Biz has.
They don't speak English. They're too short. Blah blah blah. Right.
Yeah, if those guys had surrounded Eric the whole time, some of those guys might have gotten a shot because he was willing at least to bring him in and give him a chance.
Yeah, but with Paul, nobody was in his ear. The people who were in Paul's ear for whatever reason were going like, God, that Masato Tanaka, Yoshihiro Tajiri, these guys are great workers. That was what was in Paul's ear, and Paul saw it himself. So Paul was, okay, I'm going to figure out a way to get these guys over, and especially with Tajiri. Don, you were there. He ended up being one of the most over guys in the company.
And again, that had a lot to do with, here's a guy who had such tremendous facials, him going down there and doing a facial in the close-up shot with the camera was almost like someone else going out and doing a promo. He was just so expressive. But Paul Paul would be backstage producing those promos, and I mean, and I would do stuff with Jerry from time to time, and we would try to do things where just his reactions would kind of speak louder than words, and of course his work spoke for itself. So, I mean, he had the talent, as you say. I mean, Paul has been paramount in the business in terms of being able to get guys over and play on guys' strengths, hide their weaknesses. I mean, no one ever looked at Tajiri on ECW TV and said, "Wow, that guy's not very tall." They just said, "Wow, that guy's a killer. He's a buzzsaw." You know.
What a great worker. Well, you know, the perfect example is Crazy, and I mean, you know, Crazy was in WWF. Nobody gave him a second look. Tajiri was in WWF. Nobody gave him a second look. Crazy was offered to WCW how many times, and they didn't even bite on him. And then he went to ECW, and, you know, Crazy ended up for a period there. I mean, he was really, for a while there on TV, I thought Crazy was, you know, one of the probably top 5, 6 most entertaining guys on television in the United States as far as just pure bell-to-bell.
Yeah. Well, to go back to what you were saying before, Dave, I mean, to see Crazy walking around the back in street clothes, you might not even think that he was one of the boys, you know. So to judge him, you know, based on that, but then, or to put him out in a match, for example, and say, okay, well, you've only got 3 minutes, go out there and do this. Whereas with Paul put him out there and said, you know, okay, like, but that was one thing about Paul. Paul always gave people a lot of time to get their stuff over, and Paul put the guy out there and let him get over.
Anything else?
That's it. Thanks for listening to me, guys.
Okay, you're very welcome. Let's go to Wes. Wes, what's going on?
Hey, guys, how's it going?
Really good.
I wanted to ask Don a two-part question about Lance Storm. I'd heard maybe that you had mentioned in your column that he was writing a book. If you had any more information on that. And also, where do you think his role will be with the new WCW? Do you think he'll get a legitimate shot, you know, near the top of the card?
Yeah, to answer your second question, I think he definitely will get a legitimate shot. I think you know, Vince and Jim Ross have a really good eye for talent. Lance, to me, from a work rate standpoint, one of the most talented guys out there. He's a guy who can do everything athletically, but is smart enough to realize he doesn't have to, and has turned into a really, really fine heel. And also, I mean, Paul Heyman was a guy who really kind of let Lance blossom in ECW and started to drag some decent promos out of him. So I think Paul will have a hand, too, in that. And I think Lance will get a good push, and I think that he'll be very, very successful because he's a phenomenal worker. In terms of his book, I used to joke with Lance that, you know, what kind of a book can a guy who never goes out and stays in the hotel room and plays crib all night write about professional wrestling? But apparently he's writing one, and I joke with him that I should get some royalties because I think I'm in every chapter, so we'll see.
Anything else, Wes?
Yeah, also I would ask Don about, I heard through the Observer that maybe you're going to be part of the new WCW. Where do you think maybe Eric was going with that? I think he was going to go to the, it looked like they were shaping up with the old philosophy of 96, 97 with having great undercard matches, but, you know, kind of crummy matches towards the top. But did you, you know, maybe if you heard any ideas where they were going to go with that?
I don't know if his plan was crummy matches at the top, but it ended up that way.
I don't know exactly what he was going to do. I mean, you know, the brief discussions that I had with Eric, we certainly didn't get into that, and I was just more worried about how I was going to fit in and how I was going to be able to contribute. But I think obviously, you know, you had and you still have a large amount of talent in that company, and I don't think it's going to be rocket science necessarily to put on a good show. There's a lot of talented guys, and you know, I'm sure Eric would have strove to have a good match every segment. Whether that would have happened or not, who knows? And I think that those guys that perhaps were underutilized in the past, they are going to get an opportunity now, because that's one thing about Vince. I mean, Vince puts you out there, and if you know, he lets you get over if you're going to get over. And I think at the end of the day, and this is one thing I always said to Paul Heyman, I mean, Paul let me go out there and either succeed or fail on my own merits. And I think at the end of the day in this business, that's all you can ask for. So I think those guys are going to get that opportunity.
Also, my last question for you, Don, have you heard anything maybe about the Matt Rats promotions up there in Calgary? Have you heard anything about that?
No, I haven't. I just heard that Eric was involved creatively and in a marketing standpoint. It's almost like the whole Menudo thing, right? I mean, it's like at a certain age they're gonna kick you out, I presume, or you start.
Actually, I think they're not going to do that.
I think that
anymore.
was the plan, but it's now guys are a little bit older getting in there.
You think I can?
In fact, I think one of the guys is like 31.
Really?
Yeah, I'm 32. You think I could maybe get in there?
Maybe.
Yeah, I could be like a luchador, El Rest Holdio or something.
Also, Dave, did you hear how much money do you think they're willing to spend on talent? I mean, would they go out for a Kidman or somebody like that, or is that way out of their limits?
Certainly at the beginning, that's not what they're looking at doing. I mean, if they got ultra successful and Billy Kidman's not working in WWF, why not? But with the guys now, I know they did a taping. They paid the guys like $200. So I mean, it's not like you're Billy Kidman and if there's one taping a month and you're getting $200 versus even working as a regular on the indie scene, he could make a lot more than that, working several times a month. And obviously he's going to end up in WWF, I would think, once his WCW situation straightened out in some form.
When was that taping?
Gosh, the one that Bischoff went at was at, so that's like probably 2-3 weeks ago.
Okay, guys, that's all I had. Appreciate the comments.
We have plenty of emails today on Pride coming up, as a matter of fact, if we can get to them as things go. I guess that Green Day was on Howard Stern this morning. It's from Don Cleveland, and said, told the fight story. As Tommy Dreamer related, the members still to this day, so they didn't know who Tommy Dreamer and Taz were this morning either. They still don't know. They just know they were two wrestlers. But they were and still are scared. The funniest part of the story was the lead singer saying how the rest of the bandmates just backed down and abandoned him when it looked like there was going to be a fight. It's from Morton, who goes to...
Does that confirm they don't listen to this show?
Yeah, I guess Green Day missed the show. And obviously they didn't watch ECW on TV either. So... that's from Morton, who says, did Kai and Tai used to compete in Pride? Actually, no, they never did. But Taka Michinoku did do one match for Pancrase, believe it or not. Let's see. Do you see Flash in the new WCW? Possibly. I certainly haven't heard that as something that anyone else has thought about, but I thought about it.
I think Flash is going to have a problem, just, the whole physique thing. I mean, look what happened to Big Show. This guy was making $1 million. Jim Ross makes fun of it. Well, I shouldn't say makes fun of him, but talks about the physique and the Ross report. This guy gets sent to Ohio Valley, and, Flash is right in there. Jim Ross talks about him. He's got a great heart, this and that, but he just doesn't have the body that makes you turn your head. And I think when you hear that from Jim Ross in the Ross report, that's, I don't want to say that's a sign, but it's a sign.
No, you know what it is a sign? It's a sign that you got to go to the gym and start lifting weights.
Yeah.
And watching your diet. Although he's certainly not fat, but it's a sign. I think that's what it is him kind of saying, like, look, telling the whole world at the same time, look, we recognize that you're a really talented guy now. If you get your physique up to the level, we'll consider you, but until you do,
it's so cosmetic, especially now with one company.
But Dave, do you really think now anyone in this business needs to be told to go to the gym? I mean,
apparently someone does.
Yes, it's hot that you shouldn't be. It should be obvious, but they do, because I've seen it here with the indie guys, and I know Brian, you have too, where you have guys, and I mean, they'll spend their whole lives learning moves and things like that, and yet they won't go to the gym, and it takes someone saying.
Clearly, genetically, I mean, you would know this better than I would, Dave. But I mean, genetically. Some guys can spend all the time in the gym and diet all they want, and they're still not going to look like anything.
Yes, there are some guys like that, but anyone can improve. And you're right, there are some guys who are, and
anybody can get a tan.
Take a guy like Nova. I mean, he's a great example of a guy who, over the course of a year, literally, I mean, metamorphosized into looking like Shawn Michaels body-wise in his prime. And I mean, great timing for Nova, given the current situation in the business. I mean, he's a great example to independent guys everywhere. He went from looking like he had kind of the prototypical kind of independent guy body that you're talking about into having a real big time look to match, his work.
Yeah, and he was really, he sure took it seriously. I mean, he takes it real seriously.
Fanatic about it, yeah. And I think, I think,
and he probably has to be, because he doesn't have the genetics.
No.
He's overcome his genetics by being, an absolute stickler on. I mean, he was.
That's why it's such a good story too, because there's a guy that didn't have the genetic gifts and he did it. So what's everyone else's excuse?
Yeah, I mean, he's out there. Weighing his food, timing his meals. I mean, It's real hard to do it, but he does it, and he looks good too. And I don't think I saw him last night. I don't think he's doing any steroids either. Because I've seen guys, and granted they have a lot better genetics, but I've seen guys with physiques like that that don't diet as much as he does. And so I think that he's had to overcome a lot to get that look, but he's done it. He's in great shape.
Yep.
Let's see. Here's one, Don. Whatever happened to the other Steve Regal, the one that wrestled with Jimmy Garvin? Because I don't know the answer to that.
That's interesting. I haven't heard his name. We used to get him a lot here up with the old AWA, and but no, I haven't heard his name for years.
Let's go to Todd. Todd, what's going on?
Not much. How are you doing, Dave?
Doing really good.
How are you doing, Brian?
Hey.
I have 3 questions. Actually, first I'll ask my question for you, Dave. I was planning on going to an AWA indie show here in New York tomorrow, and they're advertising Bret Hart, and I was wondering if you could verify he's going to be there.
He's going to be. He's not going to wrestle, but he's going to be there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. They seem like a reputable group, but you just never know, considering it's like New York. It's sort of a random place for him to be. Hi, Don. I have a question for you. I'm actually a big fan of you, perhaps more than most people are. I sort of see you as one of the last sort of managers that came along with the charisma and being one of the sort of legitimate mouthpieces trying to get over guys that really weren't going to get over otherwise. Sort of in the Bobby Heenan, Jimmy Hart, that sort of a mold. Do you see that sort of a role being one that's going to continue in pro wrestling, or do you think that with such an emphasis now from the earlier levels of getting mic skills from the very beginning, that's going to sort of become something that isn't going to be very important in the future of the business?
I think it hasn't been very important the last few years. I mean, the WWF when I was there weren't, really putting a lot of focus on male managers. I mean, there's obviously been a trend industry-wide towards having good-looking women out there. So I think that it hasn't really been a strong thing. I always saw, having grown up watching Bobby Heenan come through Winnipeg with the AWA and having more heel heat than anybody, and working with Nick Bockwinkel, who could cut a promo, but still Bobby, helped Nick, even though Nick was one of the best promos in the business at the time. So I've seen how a guy like a Bobby Heenan, who could talk and who knows the art of managing while you're at the ring, a guy like that can be the biggest star in a company. I mean, Vince McMahon was the top heel in wrestling for the last, 3 years anyway, for sure, maybe longer. And what Vince does is almost, it's not a manager, but it's almost that type of a role.
You've said that, I think the manager role isn't dead. What happened is that the owners of the company took the manager spots, and, you know what I mean? Because Vince and Shane and Stephanie are like the lead managers. Eric Bischoff was the lead manager on the other side, so they did push managers, just they were owners, in their role.
And in a sense, but they're not. I mean, it's like what I did with Paul with the TNN gimmick. At the start of it, I really wasn't managing anyone, and I don't know, even though I had all these guys in my group, I didn't come out when they wrestled. They're almost more henchmen. And I mean, I would have liked to have come out when they'd wrestled, because I would have been able to polish my skills as a manager. But it's almost evolved into the fact where, in one sense, the management thing has been degraded to a lower level of importance, but in another sense it's been elevated, because now the managers have become talent unto themselves and not just dependent upon talking about their own talent. The greatest line I ever heard for prospective managers was Bobby Heenan, who said, you need to manage like a wrestler and wrestle like a manager. And I think Bobby, who was an excellent worker in his day, myself, I was not a great worker at all, but I mean, having come from wrestling and gone into managing, I always remember what Bobby said about that, because I think when you're managing and you're at ringside, you need to sell everything that happens to your guy, and of course when you're in the ring, you need to wrestle like a manager. So I mean, I think that there's definitely a role for that. Will it happen again? I think it will, because I think if a new national promotion opens up, I think it's going to be more back to kind of that 80s, early 90s style of wrestling with more traditional characters, and I think they will get back to those types of managerial roles.
Well, I mean, there's almost a circle, too, because, like the women, I don't want to say they've run their course, but they've passed their peak. I mean, like, there hasn't been a woman character, who's really been like a phenomenon like Sable was, for whatever reason we can all debate, but, I mean, the fact is she really moved the ratings like crazy, which few people were able to do at that time, or this day, no one's able to do. And now there's a lot of women out there that are eye candy, but, you could lose every one of them, including China. I mean, even Lita, who is pretty over, but you could lose any one of them, and I don't think anyone would really miss them that much right now.
Yeah, you can sort of sense when someone special has come along. I don't think I'm in the majority in this opinion, just in terms of how highly I think of Don. But when I first saw Don on there, I thought there was just this discernible charisma and presence about him that I just saw from the very beginning and thought, like, this guy is going to be a gigantic star. Like the first time I saw Tammy Sitch in Smoky Mountain is the parallel I make there, just sort of this real star charisma. I hope to see you around again in National Network again. At some point or another.
Well, thanks so much.
You're welcome. And I have another question for you guys, just generally speaking. Sort of overlooked in the death of ECW and the death of WCW is the death of Randy Hills and the end of sort of the studio system. And I was wondering, all you guys, what your opinion of the studio system and whether it would ever come back again, where you have TV shows coming back from a studio as opposed to an arena.
I think there are just certain things in wrestling that won't come back for various reasons, and I think the studio is one of them. It's the whole thing we talk about. It's just like all of indies. The WWF right now is set the standard that, I mean, you can have a semi-successful, I think, local TV show. Because like a lot of local TV shows, like Shawn Michaels' group, they did better ratings than the SmackDown on UPN that was running in, I think it was like midnight for SmackDown and like 1 a.m. for, I can't remember what the time was, but, it did fairly well, but I mean, as far as like something that can become really big and go farther than just the local UPN affiliate, I just don't think it's possible to do anymore.
A lot of it's economics. I mean, what killed the Memphis show was, just a question of the whole economic thing. And Todd, I actually wrote about it in this week's Observer. It's not even, and they actually didn't lose money on the show. It's just that they could make more money, and there was insurance liabilities that just came up. And,
the fire curtain.
Yeah, things like that. I mean, Memphis was unique because I think with the studio and everything like that, and also the station paying for it, was because it was such a historical part of that culture. It was that Saturday morning wrestling forever. Those kind of shows that last, 15, 20 years, they're harder to cancel than like a show that lasted, that's only been on for 13 weeks or something. I could see, like a small company doing something in a studio. Yeah, but I mean, as far as like, the whole business going back to studio, no, because...
Well, what do you think about this, like 5 years down the road? If there's still only one company, you're going to have like a lot of guys that used to be big stars that are just gone because there's only so many spots at the top and new guys have to hopefully be brought up. And, what about these guys that were huge stars in the WWF today in 5 years going back and being like the centerpiece of a local promotion?
I don't know.
There's not going to really be another big two to go to be a national star. I mean, look at how big Lawler was in Memphis. I mean, what if Hunter 5 years down the road?
But no one could be like Lawler was in Memphis today because the guy who's like Lawler in Memphis is The Rock and Steve Austin, and whether it's Memphis or San Antonio or San Francisco, I mean, like, the kids growing up, I mean, it's The Rock and Steve Austin in every city in this country, as long as WWF.
Yeah, but Michaels helped his local promotion a lot just, by being Shawn Michaels and being there. What about these other guys, like, just trying to think of somebody in 5 years.
Oh, you can, I know what you're, but then, you're talking about Shawn Michaels. I mean, like, if Steve Austin, theoretically, were to want to stop wrestling and say, I just want to go back home to San Antonio, and Steve Austin does a wrestling show, and he's actually going to appear on it, I mean, you know what? I mean, a name that big, maybe they could do something if they really wanted to. I don't know that he would want to. I don't know that any of these other guys would want to, and you're talking about, guys used to making millions of dollars a year going back to something where you're really going to struggle. I don't know if they want to do it.
But see, the whole thing is with only one company, some of these guys, they're not going to have an option, They're not going to be able to make $1 million a year, so what are their other options? You either go to the mid-card, and if they get rid of you, you have nowhere else to go.
There may, 5 years from now, I mean, who knows? Who knows? There may be a whole bunch of companies. There may not be any companies. I mean, who knows about wrestling in 3 months? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We don't. Yep. So as far as like, I mean, I could see a local promotion, taping in a TV studio, like, I don't see any reason why not, as opposed to like a small arena. I mean, like some of those small promotions, they tape it at buildings so small that they might as well be TV studios anyway. Mm-hmm. But as far as like the WWF doing a TV studio show, I just don't see that at all. I don't know, Todd, what do you think?
Unfortunately, I think a lot of it comes from the product that you grow up with. So, you tend to romanticize what you grow up with. And the first time I saw the studio show was the USWA, which wasn't a particularly good product. I've seen tapes back from, Memphis at its peak, but the electricity was never there. I never saw the appeal in it myself. But again, it sort of depends on your localized territories. And a lot of what Ryan's saying, like, the future of wrestling, I think, if it's going to take off again, is going to be the people that the WWF cast aside, starting up their own little things and getting things sort of started up in different places. Because I don't think you're going to be able to start off on a national network and have enough success to truly compete with the WWF and succeed.
Dave, you were
okay. The key then is if you're going to do something local, and Don knows about this because he does stuff local, is that you can't get carried away and think that you're the big time, because if you do, you're going to run through a lot of money really fast.
Mm-hmm.
Dave, you were saying that you're not going to have a situation where you get another guy like Lawler who's that big, kind of on that kind of local level. What about if Bret Hart were to start working for Stampede Wrestling? Don't you think that could be achieved there?
No, if you took one of, like, an existing star today, and he were to go back, but I'm saying that you couldn't grassroots somebody like, say, Teddy Hart in Calgary.
Create somebody that has not been a national star.
or Josh Wilcox in Portland, Oregon. I'm just throwing a name out because he went to college there and had a little bit of name in football. Like, let's say Roddy Piper who's going to run a show next month, decides I'm going to start a promotion. I want to start a promotion, and whoever it is, Matt Bourne, if he had a son, or some local name that he goes, I'm going to make him the top babyface. I don't think you can make him into a Jerry Lawler just because. The people will not see it as their main guy. The main guy is The Rock.
Right.
But, like if Bret Hart were to wrestle in Calgary and do something on a small level, I mean, of course he could
Or even Piper, being the focal point of a Portland promotion.
Yeah, an existing star of that level, they could be really big. I'm just saying, like, a guy like Lawler who started out at the age of 20 and by the time he was 22 was the top star and stayed there for, until he was, in his 40s. That one I don't see happening. But, someone who already made a name, even Hulk Hogan in Orlando, if he decided, he could be really big on that local level, sure, because he already has a name.
Yeah, but the one problem with the scenario, though, is that it's a lot tougher to get a new guy over, even if you have an older star. The old system, you could put a younger guy over an older star, and that would make him into a star. But I think the modern mindset isn't so much beating someone, but being seen on a national level. So, if Terry Funk's in Amarillo and he puts over, one of Shawn Michaels' guys over there in Texas, I don't think that would get them over to an extent enough that he would be a draw on his own, even, if Terry Funk put him over for 2 years.
I agree with you there. It's like, and that is what's completely different. The winning of a match, even though we talk about it and it is important that, they put the young guys over, you've got to really accentuate it. The win...
It's not really a single win itself. It's like, the whole picture of it. We talk about Hulk Hogan jobs all the time, where Hogan beats the guy up the whole match, does a job, and
but we're talking about we're talking about like in the situation if the star did the job the right way. I don't know. This is interesting. Do you think? Ric Flair, Ric Flair made Sting in one match. Not that Sting didn't have some appeal going in, but he really, in that thing in '88 or whatever it was, I think it was '88. He really did make him in one match, and I don't know. Could Hunter, let's just say, have made Jericho in one? Yeah, it was the right match at the right time.
If you look back, like the 10-minute title change or whatever with the fast count, I think that if they really would have done that, Jericho was so over. If Hunter would have put him over clean and they would have built it up as like this gigantic thing, I think he could have made him.
You know what? I'm thinking
that one match.
Now that I think back at that time because the pop was so big and people. But it had to be
people wanted that so
people,
bad, and they gave it to him. But they gave him the fast count, and they immediately took it off him, and that was the end of it.
With Sting, just an example, Sting did not have that kind of momentum going into the Flair match, but within that 45 minutes, somewhere about 20 minutes into that match, he did.
Yeah.
Because I remember when Sting and Flair had that first Clash match. Sting was a guy being thrown to Ric Flair. And then the promotion decided to make him, and he did show potential at the time. But it was, he was not the star Luger was, in the eyes of the people at that point in time. Now, somewhere in the middle of that match, he became a much bigger star than Luger. So, they did it in, I don't know. That was, I don't know. Don, do you think you could do it in one match now?
Oh, yeah. I think in the right situation, yeah, you can. And I think the Jericho Triple H example is probably a good one. I think if it's done right and if all the parties involved want it to work out, well, which is usually the case, then I think that, yeah, sure, it can be done with the right guys.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope. You guys take care.
Okay. Okay. Thanks a bunch, Todd. This is from someone who's from Wyman Lamb, who says, I heard what Don said about Kai and Tai, and the problem is that they are not letting him talk at all. I know that Taka can speak English okay. Using him in a non-speaking role makes him look like a fool each and every week. The problem is that it's easy to do and less risky. I don't know how to class this as racist, xenophobic, or just lazy, but I still class their role up from the Young Dragons since Yang was an American, so his ability of speaking English was not a problem. I would say that the Young Dragons, as far as certainly if you were Japanese, you would not find, I don't know, would you find anything about the Young Dragons characters demeaning? Or I certainly think you would regarding
the fact that Jamie-san was white?
And that Yang was actually from the United States, even though he was of Oriental descent? Okay. Maybe. Oh, well. Let's go to Chris. Chris, what's going on?
Good afternoon.
Hey.
Hey.
Quick compliment and a quick question for Don Callis.
Good.
I appreciate your weekly commentary. I try to check it out online, the Winnipeg Sun, every week.
Love that.
That's the compliment. The question is a storyline reference that I may never have a chance to figure out again, and I'm hoping that you can tell me because you're probably the only person that can. Why did the Jackal put Farouk and Bradshaw together?
And why are they still the Acolytes?
Come on, help me out, Don.
Because I was sitting at home and Vince Russo called me and said that was what was happening.
Oh, Vince Russo.
That's what I was afraid of.
And at the time, I did whatever Vince Russo said. So there you go.
That's it. Thanks.
Okay. Let's go to Mark. Mark, what's going on?
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Doing really good.
One quick question for Dave and then a quick one for Don. Dave, I just came in on the show. What was Rick Mason's big announcement?
I guess the big announcement was that they're trying to do some sort of a reality television show as a summer show for ABC.
Okay.
And in fact, he talked of it like it's a done deal, that they're going to be on ABC doing a summer, some sort of a primetime show, which, if they were to get a primetime show on ABC, I mean, that's going to be watched by more people than watch SmackDown or Raw, unless it's a total flop. I mean, like an average rated show on that network is, watched by millions and millions of people.
Well, if anybody can do it, he can. Don, question for you.
Go ahead.
Are you still involved in the Wrestling Essentials with Bad News Allen and all those guys?
Yeah. I'm one of the people that's, I guess, termed a consultant. And Bad News is, I haven't actually done a lot for them. I'm just kind of on that list. Bad News is a real good friend of mine. Pardon me. I've traveled the world with him, and he, taught me a lot of stuff about the business and tried to teach me how to shoot. But all that happened was I found out that I didn't like pain very much. So instead, I became a manager. So there you go.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, this is from Kevin Donlin, who goes, how skilled was Paul Heyman? This is for Don. Okay, how skilled was Paul Heyman at letting the crew develop their matches, but not losing the sense of the card? I guess what he means is that, he was talking, Kevin, who wrote this, mentioned that, he saw, I guess, either the tape or was it this, there's a CCW show, the one that everyone's talking about from about a week and a half ago. And they did the most gory match in the history of wrestling, with the fluorescent light tubes and all that. And then they came back with the next match, and it was a barbed wire match. And it was like after seeing that, it's like you know what I mean. Just
how does it compare?
Yeah, I mean, and it's like with Paul giving guys in each match a lot of leeway. There still has to be that foundation of the whole card. So like you're not doing the same finish as the match before type of thing.
I always thought that Paul had a real strong sense of that, and I mean, I learned a lot about booking from Paul in terms of. I was amazed sometimes coming to the building, and Paul would, when I booked a card up here, I would lock myself in a room. Paul would be sitting out amongst the boys before the show, and people coming up to him every 5 minutes, and he would, from that, in this insanity, he would put together a card that was, really tremendous. And the other thing that Paul was really good at in terms of leeway was, he'd let you go out there and he'd give you a general idea of what he wanted, but he wouldn't, at least with me, he would never script me. In fact, I used to beg Paul, I'd say, please tell me what to do, tell me what I'm doing wrong. And Paul just almost always would say, trust your heel instincts, and as a result, you end up getting to be very, very creative in an environment like that. But, never really did it happen, or never that I saw where, you know, there'd be too much leeway where, you know, someone's match overlapped another or interfered with another. So I think it was a good balance with Paul in that respect.
I have a question for you. From a political standpoint, from Tajiri, you know, Tajiri, when this is actually a question that was sent in, at that time when ECW was going down, and WWF and WCW both had interest in him, and he went with WWF, do you think he was lucky to make that move? And if he hadn't made that move, I guess timing-wise, I mean, at the time I thought he made the wrong move. Now he probably made the right move.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that you know, who knows what would have happened. You know, the cream rises to the top, as they say, and he might have ended up with a job. But you know, a lot of guys left Paul. I mean, Justin and Jerry Lynn were two, and went straight to Vince. And I mean, really, you know, I don't think really fleshed out at all what their WCW options were too much. You know, and it's obviously looking like a real smart move right now.
When did you first come to the realization that ECW was pretty much finished? I asked Dreamer this yesterday. Was it like the day you saw the lawsuit file or the bankruptcy filing, or was it you know, the final show that they ran?
You know, Paul, the last pay-per-view that I did in January, I sat and talked with Paul for quite a long time in the dressing room after the show, and you know, Paul was very upbeat and looked very relaxed, which I wasn't sure if it was because he realized he had come to terms with things being over, or whether he just, you know, felt like he had things under control. I honestly was someone who never worried about a lot of that stuff, because in my mind I always had a real sense that whatever, if there was any chance of saving that company, Paul was going to do it. And if it didn't happen, it meant that there was no way it could be done. So I didn't tend to worry about it, and I didn't tend to think about it. And I was out of the country for 2 weeks right after that pay-per-view in Thailand, and I was totally, you know, incommunicado about wrestling. I hadn't heard anything, and I came back, and, you know, you'd still hear, you know, ECW was, you know, not running shows and things like that. I don't know when it hit me. I think, you know, maybe when he was on Raw. I mean, I think that was a fairly awesome.
Well, that was a good sign.
That's a good sign. I mean, I think logically, maybe I knew earlier than that, but the part of me that absolutely loved going to work every week for Paul didn't want to believe it, and still held on, you know, to the hope that he'd pull it out. And I mean, you know, up until when the bankruptcy statement was filed, I still, you know, when I would send Paul an email or whatever, would say, you know, I hope I'm coming back to work for you soon. I mean, you're in a situation that's something so special, which was that company, and, you know, you want to get it back.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you can delude yourself, and, you know, maybe that's okay.
You know, it's interesting, and I sensed this with Dreamer yesterday, that it's almost like, you know, and I think with him, no matter what he does in wrestling, I think that's always going to be the best part of his career, in his mind.
Well, I think so. And I mean, if you talk to Raven even about the whole Raven Dreamer thing several years ago, I mean that was obviously a huge thing, and they see it as that. And you know, you even got the sense. I mean, and at that time, it was like they were part of this cutting edge thing that not a lot of people knew about. It kind of exploded on a minor level at that time, and then into something much bigger. And I think that's something that I could look back and say, well, geez, you know, no matter what happens, I may never get the push that Paul gave me last year. But, you know, you can't, I don't think you can dwell on it. I think for all of us, I mean, you got to go forward, and you can never lose sight of the fact that at the end of the day, we all have bills to pay, and that this is a business. And, you know, I mean, if Tommy Dreamer, I think Tommy Dreamer can be a huge star in the WWF if they want him to be and if he wants to be. But there's a million other ways Tommy Dreamer can contribute to a company. He's a very smart guy. So at the end of the day, the glory in front of the camera and being over is great, but you also got to pay bills.
This is from John, who says, starting next month with only one pay-per-view being offered, could there be an emergence of pay-per-view shows with independent wrestlers such as Cruiserweight or Deathmatch tournaments?
Oh, God, I hope not.
I would say...
Haven't people learned yet that those don't work?
Yeah. I mean, the
thing that really struck me was I was doing like the independent section. I was writing about the Turnbuckle show a couple of weeks ago that drew 200 fans. I'm sitting there going, you know, why would you even say that there's even a hint of a possibility that you would run a pay-per-view drawing 200 fans? I mean, it just doesn't work.
I think that first of all, I think because I think that you got to look at the reality of pay-per-view, and that is that ECW clearly, I think that the economics of ECW when this bankruptcy came in showed that the buy rates of those pay-per-views was not really that good over the last year, and that's one of the reasons why the company didn't make money. And WCW, we know the buy rates of that were not good over the last year. WWF's buy rates and revenue from pay-per-views through the roof. So, I mean, what it tells you is that, yes, if you're the WWF, you can make tons of money on pay-per-view. But everyone, I mean, look at, like, those guys that did the Rodman pay-per-view, iGeneration, WOW, what was it, Heroes of Wrestling. No, I mean, even, granted, Heroes of Wrestling was a terrible show. But on the Internet, just as an example, everybody was talking about that show, and the show was a total financial, I mean, it was a flop in the ring, but it was a total financial flop. Nobody has really done big business on pay-per-view except for the WWF, and since ECW and WCW we're going back over a year. So you think about it, you need exposure, and you need guys that are over on a national basis to make money on pay-per-view. The idea that you can do it with a fringe wrestling show, no way, not today. There may have been a day you could. But
that's another good thing, too. You're just talking about the Internet. I remember when Heroes of Wrestling came out, that thing was all over the Internet. It was everywhere. I mean, I got a press release on it. All my friends knew about it, but it didn't mean a thing. So to think you can run a pay-per-view and use, like, people that are popular on the Internet and stars that, the grassroots fans love, it just won't work.
This is from someone who's bringing up Nathan Jones. We talked about at the beginning of the show. He just goes, I agree Nathan Jones has a lot of potential, but his age, he's 30, is working against him, considering he won't be ready for the big time for 3 or 4 years. Hopefully for him, it'll be a little bit quicker, but start at 30. Don, what do you think? I mean, guys have done it. Bad News started at, 35, 36, and had a long career, too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and Bad News' body had already taken a lot of abuse from all the judo training. And I think, Nathan Jones might be 30, but in bump years, how old is he? I mean, I was joking with Jericho about this the other day. I mean, bump years are almost like dog years, right? I mean, I'm 33, or 32, and I haven't taken a bump hardly in 4 years because the offices I work for decided they wanted to use me in a speaking role. So I think you have to look at it like that. Now, the problem he has is one of a learning curve in terms of the psychology and how fast he picks things up in the ring. And I mean, we saw that a little bit too with Glenn Kolka, who we had up here in Winnipeg, for a while, and he was a good friend of mine. I mean, he's a guy who had all the talent in the world, but I mean, you start learning mentally this business at 30, 32, 33, and it's a steep learning curve.
Well, the one thing with Glenn Kolka now, as compared to Nathan Jones, is football is a really rough sport, whereas, not that Nathan Jones, he did acting, and he did, strongman contests can wear on your body too, but I don't think it's as tough on your body as playing, 8 seasons of football or whatever it was that Glenn Kolka was, playing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think for Glenn it wasn't so much a case of physical. I mean, I think what Glenn struggled with, if he struggled with anything, was the mental aspect of the business. Thinking in the ring and remembering spots and things like that. Which, I mean, people don't think of it that are outside this business, but it's a huge important part.
Okay, we're going to have to wrap this up in just a second. I'm going to get through about a couple of emails, and then we're going to get out of here. This is another Pride one. It says, I recently purchased a tape of Pride 10, and I was wondering, what was wrong with Ken Shamrock? You want to answer that one?
We've been waiting for Ken Shamrock to come on the show and answer that question, and for some reason he never shows up.
No, Henzo dislocated, I think, his elbow. As far as Ken, from what Ken said to me was that he just ran out of gas. I mean, it was the strangest fight. He just beat the hell out of Fujita for 4 minutes, kind of beat him up a little bit more for 2 minutes, and then he said, Pete, throw in the towel. He just said he was totally out of gas. Let's see. This is also for Don. He goes, what was the angle at the end? Where was the angle at the end with you and Jerry Lynn going to go?
I don't know where it was going to go exactly. In my own mind, one of the many things that I'm sad about ECW going this way, I never got to go on with Jerry Lynn. I think Jerry Lynn would have become the top heel in that company. I think Jerry Lynn is one of the greatest workers I've ever seen, live or otherwise. And I think he would have gone on to be the top heel in the company, and I think eventually turned back babyface. And I mean, there's a guy who could have even carried me to a good match.
Okay, this is one other
Shawn
thing.
Michaels in the Hall of Fame, yes or no?
Yeah.
Yes.
Just I agree. See if there's anything else. Here, why isn't Big Show... Okay, we were talking about... Is there a special place for the Hall of Fame guys? You know, like, I mean, it's like the actual Hall of Fame. I guess, is there an actual Hall of Fame? No. Let me see what else. Have you ever heard of Grand Prix Wrestling or Real Action Wrestling in Canada?
Yes.
Okay. You worked Grand Prix, didn't you?
Wrestling.
Yeah. That's Grand Prix Wrestling's in Newfoundland?
Grand Prix is in New Brunswick. It runs all over the Maritimes. Neil Dupree's a promoter. He's been around forever. They run 7 nights a week. You know, it's actually Rick Martel and I and Edge and Christian were all there right before, you know, the WWF run. And it's a great place to go for young guys because you get 7 nights a week work for like 4 months.
Now, is he still running every year or no?
He's still running, and Real Action Wrestling is running in opposition. So.
Aren't they doing opposition this year, this summer?
Pardon me?
Aren't they doing opposition this summer?
Yeah. I mean, but they're running now. Kurgan's working for Real Action. And then you got a few of the guys from Emil are now working for them as well in opposition. The money's terrible out there, but it's a great place to polish up.
Okay, Don, I want to thank you very much for joining us, and I want to remind everyone that tomorrow we'll be back here with superstar Billy Graham.